Jason Carter had never been one for drama. His idea of a perfect evening involved kicking back on his front porch, a cold drink in hand, watching the sun dip below the horizon. His home, sitting at the edge of a quiet suburban neighborhood, had been his retreat from the world for years. That peace, however, was about to be shattered. The homeowners association had declared war. Jason had lived in his house long before the HOA even existed. When the neighborhood first sprang up, a group of residents formed the HOA, promising community harmony. Jason, having never signed any agreement, ignored them. His property was legally exempt, but that didn't stop the HOA from trying to control him. Maybe it was his American flag waving proudly from the porch, or the vintage muscle car parked in his driveway that didn't fit the HOA's pristine vision. Maybe it was just the fact that he refused to bow to their arbitrary rules. Whatever the reason, Jason had caught their attention. And now, they were coming for him. One crisp morning, a bright red letter appeared on his doorstep. Notice of violation. Non-compliant mailbox. Unauthorized house color. Landscaping violations. Jason chuckled as he skimmed the list. What a joke. He crumpled the letter and tossed it in the recycling bin. He wasn't in the HOA. He figured they'd realize their mistake and leave him alone. But later that afternoon, a knock on his door signaled otherwise. Standing on his porch was a woman in her late 50s, wearing a pin that read HOA President. Her posture was rigid, her expression tight with forced politeness. Mr. Carter, she greeted as if speaking to a rebellious child. I assume you received our notice? Jason leaned against the doorframe. I did. And I assume you know I'm not part of your HOA. Her lips curved into a thin smile. That's what we need to discuss. There's nothing to discuss. My house predates your HOA. You don't have authority over me. Her expression hardened. Sir, we are simply trying to maintain community standards. If you refuse to comply, there will be consequences. Jason raised an eyebrow. Like what? A sternly worded letter. Her nostrils flared. Fines. Potential legal action. We have ways of ensuring compliance. Jason let out a low laugh. Oh yeah? Try it. Let's see how well that goes. With a final glare, she turned on her heel and stormed off. Jason knew this wasn't over. And he was right. The next morning, he found an orange warning notice taped to his front door. His violations had escalated. Grass is 0.75 inches too tall. Mailbox clashes with community aesthetic. Vehicle in the driveway is an eyesore. The final line made him laugh. Failure to comply will result in legal intervention. Jason crumpled the paper and tossed it into the trash. If the HOA wanted a fight, they were about to get one. The HOA wasted no time making his life miserable. That afternoon, he noticed a group of board members standing across the street, whispering, stealing glances at his house. Minutes later, a landscaper truck pulled up. A uniformed worker stepped out, looking confused, holding a work order. Jason met him halfway. Can I help you? The landscaper hesitated. We were called out to trim the yard to HOA standards. Jason folded his arms. That's funny because I didn't call anyone. The HOA president stepped forward. We took the liberty of hiring landscapers for you. The cost will be added to your outstanding fines. Jason let out a sharp laugh. Lady, you must be out of your mind. I don't have outstanding fines. I'm not in your HOA. Her lips pressed together. You live in this neighborhood. That makes you part of the association. Jason smirked. Wrong. My property predates your HOA. Legally, you have no authority over me. The landscaper, sensing he was in the middle of something way above his pay grade, muttered, I think I'll head out, before climbing back into his truck and speeding off. The HOA woman glared at him. You can't just ignore the rules. Jason shrugged. I absolutely can. Her face turned red. You think you're above the law? He grinned. No. I just think you have no idea how the law works. She stormed off without another word. Within the hour, another HOA letter appeared in his mailbox. This one was stamped with final warning. Jason just smiled. The real war had just begun. The next day, Jason found two police officers standing on his porch. Sir, we received a complaint from the Homeowners Association about a dispute over property regulations. Jason sighed. You've got to be kidding me. The HOA woman stood behind the officers, arms crossed triumphantly. One of the officers asked, Are you refusing to comply with the HOA's rules? Jason crossed his arms. I'm not in the HOA. The officers exchanged glances before turning to the HOA rep. Ma'am, is he actually part of your HOA? She stiffened. He lives here. That means he's under our guidelines. One officer turned back to Jason. Sir, do you have proof that your property isn't under their jurisdiction? Without missing a beat, Jason stepped inside, grabbed a folder of legal documents, and handed it over. Knock yourself out. The officer flipped through the documents. His expression remained neutral, but after a moment, he closed the folder and handed it back. Looks like you're right. The HOA woman gasped. What? The officer turned to her, his patience clearly wearing thin. Ma'am, he's not legally obligated to follow your HOA's regulations. She sputtered. But, unless he's breaking actual laws, there's nothing we can do. Jason leaned against the doorframe, watching her struggle to keep her composure. Finally, she hissed, "This isn't over." Jason smirked. "I was hoping you'd say that. If they wanted a war, he'd give them one." Jason knew the HOA wouldn't back down quietly. The moment the police left, he saw the HOA president furiously typing on her phone. She was already planning her next move. Sure enough, by the following morning, Jason woke up to find a new violation notice taped to his front door. Urgent action required. Final warning. Unapproved fence height violation. Non-compliant outdoor lighting. Lack of HOA-approved exterior paint. Jason smirked as he read the ridiculous list. They were grasping at straws now. Then he spotted something else. His trash cans were missing. Walking to the curb, he saw nothing but an empty space where they should have been. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," he muttered, pulling out his phone to check his security cameras. And there it was. 2 HOA board members, under cover of darkness, hauling away his bins. Jason gritted his teeth. All right, now it's personal. Jason decided it was time to go on the offensive. He called his lawyer, Dan Mitchell, a sharp-witted attorney who loved a good HOA fight. "So they stole your trash bins?" Dan chuckled. "That's straight-up theft." "Damn right it is. And I want to press charges." Dan grinned through the phone. "Let's turn up the heat. I'll file a formal police report and send them a cease and desist letter. Do they want to play dirty? Let's play." By noon, a patrol car pulled up in front of the HOA's office. 2 officers walked in, and minutes later, the HOA president came storming out, red-faced. Jason, watching from his porch, raised his coffee cup in salute. The next move from the HOA was as petty as expected. Jason started noticing flyers posted around the neighborhood, all featuring a picture of his house with the words, "Is this the kind of home we want in Westwood?" Jason burst out laughing. They were trying to publicly shame him. That afternoon, he made his own flyer. What's worse, a legal home or an HOA that steals property? Ask me about it. By the end of the week, his version outnumbered theirs. Jason wasn't the only one tired of the HOA president's antics. At the next HOA meeting, board members finally had enough. "Karen, we are getting legal threats because of this," Richard Graham, the treasurer, snapped. "You stole a man's property and tried to cover it up. That's criminal." Karen folded her arms. "We are maintaining standards." Linda, another board member, sighed. "We are bleeding money from legal fees. We've lost 3 HOA members this month alone. We need to stop." Richard turned to the rest of the board. Vote of no confidence. Hands shot up. Karen's face paled. "Wait. Effective immediately," Richard said. "You're removed as HOA president." Karen stood there, speechless, before storming out of the meeting. Jason, who had been sitting in the back, smirked. One down. Losing her title wasn't enough for Karen. She had one last trick up her sleeve. A few nights later, Jason heard footsteps outside. The next morning, his mailbox was smashed, and his front gate was spray-painted with the words, "This isn't over." Jason checked his security cameras. Sure enough, there she was, Karen Whitmore, caught red-handed. He called the sheriff. By that evening, Karen was in handcuffs. The news picked up the story, and suddenly, Karen went from being a power-hungry HOA president to a disgraced neighborhood villain. A month later, she moved out. Jason stood on his porch, sipping his coffee, watching the moving truck roll away. He smiled. Game over. With Karen gone, the new HOA president, Richard, approached Jason with a white flag. "We just want peace," he said. "We're rolling back all of Karen's ridiculous policies. You won't hear from us again." Jason tipped his hat. Sounds like the first smart decision this HOA has made. And just like that, peace returned to Westwood Drive. For the first time in months, Jason could wake up, tend to his yard, and enjoy his coffee without looking over his shoulder. The war was over. And Jason? He had won.